We are going to talk about a few of my favorite tricks that I've been using for the past couple years in reading to help some of my students with dyslexia and with reading disabilities. So again, this month is National Dyslexia Awareness Month, so it's a perfect time for us to dive into making others aware about dyslexia, what it is, what it isn't, and ways that we can help and support our learners, whether we are in the home or whether we are partnering with our teachers at school. There are some great resources out there and a lot of people that are a wealth of knowledge. So tonight, I hope you walk away with, unfortunately, the idea of what it's like to be a struggling reader, because we are going to go through a little simulation where I really want to build up that empathy piece so that we can understand what our children are experiencing in the classroom and what they are experiencing at home when you are working with them, especially probably more now than ever. It's not just homework that you're dealing with in the home. Your students are home all day long. And so whomever they're with, they are having to really support them and their needs right now in ways that we probably weren't used to before. I would love for you all to walk away with trying out one of the tricks to practice with your learner. And of course, we want to just take away the treat of watching them grow. Again, I'm Abby, and I fell in love with teaching reading in 2018. Like Helen mentioned, we both have this big interest in Orton Gillingham. And so in 2018, I applied for a pilot project that the Department of Ed was offering. And thankfully, I was accepted, and I was able to be trained in a structured literacy approach through the Department of Education. And that really just ignited this passion inside of me. I was a special ed teacher in the past, and I've always seen the struggle, and the struggle is real. And I just really felt that this approach and these practices were the missing links that so many of our students need. So since 2018, I have continued to participate in some trainings through my wonderful trainer through the Department of Education and the Academy of Orton Gillingham. And I've been trained at the classroom educator level. And then most recently last spring, COVID kind of opened the door for me to do some online training since we were home. And I pursued the associate level training. So I have this goal in sight that I will pursue that certification this spring with a practicum student. So we shall see how that works out. And I'm just excited to partner with all of you this evening. Okay, so as we start, I wanted you guys to just take a moment to reflect. Think back, if you can, to the moment where you think you learned how to read. Was there a moment in your memory where you remember the first experiences of reading? It doesn't have to necessarily be, the moment, but just take a moment and reflect on that. Did it come easily for you? Was it something that you remember you enjoyed right away and it wasn't a struggle? Or maybe it was challenging for you. And so maybe because it was challenging for you, you can relate to your learner that may struggle with reading. So I just wanted you to take that for a moment and just reflect and ponder on that. We are going to participate in a tiny portion of a simulation. I've kind of watered it down just for time's sake, but there is a passage in this presentation. I'm going to also link that PDF into the chat room right now so that you can open it up. We are going to time you for 2.5 minutes, and then I'm going to follow up with some comprehension questions. There will be some letter substitutions, so please make sure that you look at the directions at the top of the page, and please read until I tell you to stop. There's no breaks. I want you to start when I tell you to begin and stop when I ask you to. Does everyone have that link ready? Maybe give me a thumbs up, shake your head if that document is open. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start my timer. You have 2.5 minutes. Please begin reading. I'm going to ask you some comprehension questions now. So let's see. First of all, what is the main topic of this article? And you can type in the chat room or you can unmute yourself, but it might be more efficient to type in the chat room. What was the main topic of this article? The stress in the brain. Good. The effects of stress in the brain. Fantastic. Look at you all. Wonderful readers. Very good. So yeah, it was about stress and the brain. When researchers gave animals lots of excess stress, what did they notice about their brains? So you should have read something about their memory problems. It alters the brain cells, the brain function. What about, according to the article, tell me about the hippocampus. It has an important function. What is the function of the hippocampus? It would diminish, okay. Yes, so how did you all read this article knowing that I was going to time you? Could you guys maybe share some of that in the chat room? Knowing that I was going to time you, how did you read this article? Just like a learner in a classroom, a teacher says, okay, I'm going to time you for this timed reading. Maybe drop some of those words in the chat room. It was hard. Yes. And Courtney said couldn't get that far. Okay. And Nancy, your article wasn't in English. Oh, I mean, so that's a barrier right there, right? Kaylee, you read slowly with limited comprehension. Absolutely, because you knew I was going to time you, and you knew that I also said I'm going to ask you questions. So you read more slowly because that is what good readers do. They take time to focus in because you knew that I was going to ask you questions. And Helen, yes, great job getting the title. I'm super proud of you. So let me ask you guys this. I'm going to go into the next slide. I have a Padlet created for you all. So in the chat room, you can either join that link. I want you to use, and I can even share my screen to show you. When you open this Padlet, you should see a brick building. And down in the bottom right-hand corner is a plus sign. If you click that, I want you to put two things on the sticky note. First, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not frustrated at all, and 10 being frustrated to the point where you wanted to quit, you wanted to walk away from your computer, how frustrated were you? So put a number on there. And then the second part of that, give me an emotion word. So on your Padlet sticky note, give me some type of emotion you were feeling while reading this. And you should be able to see that your peers are putting those numbers and those emotion words up on that board. So you're seeing a lot of frustration, 10s, 8s, 6, 5, confused, nervous, absolutely. That's a good one. Insecure, tired. Oh, that's a really good one. Think about your learners. Think about the students in your life that come home exhausted from school. That's a really important one to remember. So I think if we were to look at this, frustrated was the number one answer. Headache. So your head hurt. I mean, it was exhausting. It was painful. Go ahead and like the ones that you thought you can resonate with and show some of that connection there. Absolutely. So if you think about how you feel, and I don't know you all, and I don't know your reading story, I would venture to say that probably most of us read and read well, but maybe not. Maybe some of us struggle with reading. But if we did read well, and then I put that type of challenge on top where where the letters had different sounds and you had to still decode that passage, knowing that you were going to be timed, knowing that you were going to be asked questions. This simulation, like I said, super, super small example of what our learners are experiencing in the classroom every day, and then when they come home to do their homework assignments. Thanks for participating in that. This quote always speaks to me after doing this simulation because, you know, it just says, once you learn to read, you will be forever free. And I think about so many learners that want to feel that freedom and they want to open up a book and read it for pleasure. And every time the teacher says, it's independent reading time, grab your books, that feeling that they feel when they're experiencing what you just experienced. It always hits me that, you know, they're missing something that comes so easily for others is so difficult for them. So let's dive into what is dyslexia. And because it is Dyslexia Awareness Month, let's go into the definition that our Virginia Department of Education uses in their paperwork. It says the disabilities in Virginia, this is how we define dyslexia. It is distinguished from other learning disabilities due to its weakness occurring at the phonological level. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that then will impede naturally that growth of vocabulary or background knowledge. So you have to think about our learners. If they do have dyslexia or if they have a specific learning disability in the area of reading, their background knowledge, their experiences may not be similar to those other learners in their classroom because they haven't had that relationship with text. Of course, you all as parents are amazing, and you might have provided your learner with that rich discussion and those experiences that we know as teachers add up to so much in the vocabulary piece. But you have to think about it. They still are missing those pieces such as vocabulary that we gain from reading. So what I want to focus on is I want you to understand that we know that dyslexia falls under the category of SLD. So if you have a student with a specific learning disability in reading, dyslexia in Virginia is under that umbrella or falls under that category. If your learner has a learning disability in reading, or if you have a learner that just might not be specifically labeled in a reading disability area, but still struggles to read, I think you're still going to get a lot out of this presentation. Remember, when we are doing this presentation tonight, the goal is to increase the passion for reading. So implement these strategies at home in an approach where your learner feels that it's fun and creative. What I'm sharing tonight, my intention is not for you to try all of these at once, or you will definitely feel overwhelmed and you will definitely probably make your child feel overwhelmed. You want to work on one concept at a time and take the time to play with these strategies. Your job as a parent is to scaffold that passion for reading and that love. You're not under the same stress as, as far as giving tests. So take this time to implement these strategies and do them in fun ways, which we'll go over this evening. But again, I'm going to stress, please do not try all of these at once, or you're going to feel overwhelmed and feel like you need to go back to school or something and get all of these trainings. So have fun with this. Definitely wanted to point out that you should really try to partner with your child's teacher to ask what skills they are learning in school, areas that they have deficits, so that you can take some of these pieces that we're going to practice with tonight, and then you can apply those skills and make it very meaningful and practical for your learner. All right, so 3 tricks to treat your learner. We are going to, there's so much out there, and to just cover so much, I just decided to pick my 3 favorite areas, or my 3 favorite techniques that I like to do when I work with students that are struggling to read. The first area we're going to work on tonight is reversals. And then we're going to go into something called trace, copy, cover, avert, using some catchy jingles. And then we're going to look at the area of fluency, because we know that in order to comprehend and to really be a successful reader, we need to capture that fluency piece as well. Okay, so the first trick is, let's talk about letter reversals. So I know that when I was younger, a lot of times if you heard the word dyslexia, it was because, you might have heard the myth that students that write their letters backwards or they read backwards. And we know now that that is just a myth. That is not what categorizes a learner as having dyslexia. So because dyslexic learners and all learners have some reversals, I love to touch on this area right away, because honestly, I believe it's just a teaching moment. And a lot of times when you see a student with reversals, it's just because they haven't maybe caught onto the good instruction that was provided at the time, or maybe they weren't provided the instruction that they needed. So reversals are very common in the early stages of learning. So it's typical among any typical functioning child, among average and dyslexic children. It is a sign that representations of letters and spellings of words have not been firmly established, not that a child necessarily has a reading disability. So I'm sure some of you all have seen this in your child's younger years, where they have written some of their letters, especially the stick letters, backwards. Sometimes you can easily make out what it says. It's very obvious, but it's something that they might continue to do. So let's look at how you as parents can probably work on this area. If you take a look at all of these shapes, somebody tell me in the chat room, what are all of these objects? What are they all considered? What's the name of it? You see 4 what? So there's 4 chairs, right? Yes, good job. So with this, if you look at a chair and you turn it to the left, it's still a chair. If you look at a chair and you turn it to the right, it's still a chair. If you flip the chair upside down, it's still a chair. So you have to think, a lot of times our learners just have an issue with directionality. Maybe they really don't understand their left and their right yet. So a lot of times we need to stop and look at the letters and the fact that they're backwards and just hone in on teaching them some tricks to know what direction the stick and the shape and what it looks like. So here's one of my favorite things and my favorite areas to teach. So first, when you have those reversals, you want to have them probably you might know from the child's teacher which letters are tricky for them, or you might not. And an easy way for you all to figure that out is to just have your child write their alphabet. Alphabet writing will tell you a lot. And I won't go into so much detail on, all of the different areas that we have learned. But if your student can't write the alphabet A to Z and they're skipping letters, especially depending on their age, that is a very telltale sign that there's something that you might want to look into. But have them write their alphabet. And then when you look at that writing piece, identify which letters are tricky for them. And those are the ones that you're going to really want to work on with them in your spare time. But you're going to make it fun. So just remember that you can teach old dogs you can teach an old dog new tricks. So just because you have a writer and your student is in middle school or high school, I truly believe that with the right instruction, chances are that you can correct some of those reversals. So we will use some catchy phrases tonight to help them remember the formations of letters. All right, so I have included in this presentation some posters that you can print and post around your home for the times where your child is writing or doing some type of homework where they need to write their spelling words and they forget. I've worked with students before where when I have these posters in my classroom, I have no problem with them looking up and remembering the catchy story that goes with it. So I teach the tricky letters with little stories. And oftentimes the reversal letters are the ones that are the sticks with the circles, right? Because it's like that chair. No matter which way you turn that letter, it looks the same. So the first one is B. And you can see that the little poster is a bat, and then the circle is after it. So when I teach my students, I actually show them how to write the letters. And oftentimes students write their letters pushing in an upward motion. And we really want to retrain them to start at the top line for most letters and push down. And so I try to say that in my language. I'll say bat and then the ball. So for the B, it's like make your bat, and you want to teach them to start up at the top, push down, and then make their ball. The letter D, you can use a catchy little slogan like doorknob and then come down for the door. A lot of students want to push up with the stick and then they don't know which way to put the circle. So think about that doorknob. Tell them, what shape is a doorknob? It's a circle. So you're going to make your doorknob first and then you're going to come down for the door. Or they like this one too, donut, and then you get 6, so you have to go to the doctor, and the stick line is representative of, a body. The P one, I have to tell you, sometimes I come up with some things on my own because I don't like what I find on the internet. And so my students in second grade a few years ago, we came up with this one. We said the pirate goes down into the ship. So we start at the top of the ship, we come down, and then comes up to the top with his pancake or with her pancake. So it's really crazy stuff, but it's what sticks. And really whatever makes sense to your learner is what you do. The one that the poster goes with is first the pencil. So you'd have the pencil with the eraser at the top. So you're pushing it down to the point. And then you're going to pop the balloon. All right. Q is, I'm going to have to give credit to my husband because I'm like, I always, I don't have a story with the Q, but I have a quarter picture. So help me with this. And so he's like, well, you put the quarter in the machine and then the gumball will come down. So think about that quarter goes in that gumball machine. And then after that, the gumball will come down. So I hang these posters up in my classroom. I think that they're really helpful to hang up around your study room, your office, wherever your student is working, the kitchen, the refrigerator, just so that it's something that they can refer to. Of course, this is more elementary. I know that middle and high school students probably would be like, okay, what are you all doing? This is, too babyish. And so you might have to get creative and think of a way for them to connect, but it's not too late to work on those skills. And I think if your learner knows that it's just between you and them, that it would be more of a safe place for them to work on something like this, and they can still be responsive. The next trick that I want to review is something called trace, copy, cover, look away. And this is one of my favorite things that I've learned to do with my students because you can use this skill, this concept with almost anything that you're teaching them. You can use this with sight words. You can use this with single letter sounds when you're teaching them what a letter and its sound representation is. You can use this with vowel teams, with digraphs, whenever you're teaching a sound. So I know my language person out there, I know that you love stuff like this because we're really working with the sound, what our mouth is doing when we're making those sounds, anything to help connect that to the brain so that they're making that learning more valid. So let's just say that we're going to do this tonight. And if you have a piece of paper, I think it would be fun for you to try this out with me. So just grab a piece of scratch paper. There is a template that I can send you, but oftentimes when I'm working with my learners, we just work from a journal or notebook paper. And if I'm going to teach them a new sound, at the top of the paper, I write those letters that make that sound 3 times going across, just like in this box where it says trace. So tonight, we're going to pretend that we're learning the sound AI, okay? So we're going to learn the vowel team AI. So on the top of your paper, I want you to write AI space AI space AI. So that would represent what you would write for your learner when you're going over some spelling words that the teacher has sent home and you're looking at the pattern for the week and you know your student is going to need extra practice, more so than maybe some of the other kids in the classroom. So you know that you're having to set aside 10 or 15 minutes every night to help reinforce those spelling words. So let's pretend that our word list had the vowel team AI in it this week, okay? So step 1 is you're going to tell your child to trace the letters while stating a little jingle or like a little chant. So I usually have like a little beat and I just say AI says A in the middle because we have rules in our language and we know that AI always comes at the very, very beginning of a word, like say the word aim, but most often it's going to come in the middle of the word. So when they learn all the different rules of the long vowel sound of A, at this point, they've probably learned that A consonant E says A, and now they're starting to get into some vowel teams that say the same sound. So they've got to know what position of the word they're going to find that sound. And so AI normally, majority of the time, will come in the middle of a word. So you're going to have them say that jingle and go ahead while you guys are with me tonight. And I want you to say it to yourself. I want you to say, as you're writing, you're going to trace over what you just wrote. So you're going to trace and you're going to say AI says A in the middle and do it 3 times. Trace over your writing. AI says A in the middle. And then the 3rd time, I says A in the middle. And you can give them keywords to hold on to. It really doesn't matter. You know, I might say I says A like in male or something, or male's not a good one because never mind, that wasn't a good one. Rain. There we go, rain. All right, so then you're going to go into step 2. You're going to copy the letters, and they're still allowed to see the top part. They are just going over the sound. So now on their own, here's where they're going to practice their letter formation, and they're going to say it again. So everyone, we're going to copy this, and we're going to say I says A in the middle. So go ahead and do that 3 times. I says A in the middle. I says A in the middle. One more time. I says A in the middle. Now here's the part where they like to have fun. So I usually say, okay, go grab a book or a magazine or a piece of paper, and I want you to cover up steps 1 and 2 so you don't see it. I said, so then they have to cover up the top part. And now from memory, you're working on that muscle memory now, right? So now they have to write it 3 times. And again, they're saying it each time as they write it. So I'm going to go ahead and let you do that. Say it to yourself, say the rule. And then once you do that, their favorite part is the avert. So avert means like while distracted. So the best way to distract my learners is I tell them that they have to close their eyes. And you guys are parents, so you have you can have a little bit more fun. You can put a blindfold on them. You can distract them and make silly sounds. You can do whatever you want to distract them. But the point is that they're distracted, but they're not looking at their paper. So they're really having to use their muscle memory in conjunction with their hands and they're speaking it. So they're using all of those different methods of learning to write the rule without looking. So they're actually making that picture in their head when they're looking away, and then they're writing it. So you can do this technique for practicing even your reversal letters. You can do trace, copy, cover for anything. Like I said, if they're having a hard time with the letter B and they're reversing that, stick with the letter B for 2 weeks if you have to. Don't rush it. You can do the B where they're saying the jingle, bat and then the ball, bat and then the ball. And they're saying that over and over, okay? You can do it with sight words. I oftentimes call them, heart words or red words because I really think that most sight words, well, actually it's not me, but most of the research out there now says that 90-some% of our English words are actually decodable, meaning that really a sight word, you can find the sounds of most of the letters in a word. So if you can just find the tricky part, and put a heart around that, that's the part they really need to focus on. That's tricky for them. And that's another technique that I didn't cover tonight. So I won't go into too much detail, but I can definitely send you information on sight words. This is the fun part you can do with trace, copy, cover. Try to take some sandpaper, like the sheets of sandpaper that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, and stick them underneath of your child's writing paper so that they have that tactile connection. It's bumpy. And so with that different sensory connection, they're also probably making a different connection to their brain. There's some research out there that supports that type of learning. You can have them just do it on whiteboards. You can have them go outside. If you have a sidewalk or if you're in a neighborhood with paved roads, go outside and do this on the pavement. Make it fun for them. Any form in which they don't think they're in school because they've already spent that time in school all day. And unfortunately, some of those feelings that you were feeling while doing that simulation, they're feeling that off and on throughout the day. And so the last thing they want to come home to is you saying, okay, sit down and pull out that notebook. We're going to do trace, copy, cover. They don't even need to know that you're doing these techniques if you make it fun. I would also say that after introducing them to new sounds, be sure to always expose them to words with those sounds. So if you're taking some spelling words that they're bringing home, come up with other words and put them on, make either flashcards or if you're outside, write those words on the sidewalk in chalk and say, hey, this is a word like the sound that has the A in it, like you're learning at school this week. And just have fun with it to reinforce whatever that teacher is teaching them in school. Also, when you're reading with that sound, you also want to have them write. So whatever you do for reading, a student with dyslexia really needs to do with writing. They need to use both reading and writing go hand in hand. So have fun with it. Have them write words in shaving cream, pudding, whatever, or a fun marker, whatever your younger students do. I really think the older students would like that sandpaper. I think that they would find that that would be something that's not too childlike. This is just an example of taking that skill, putting it into some words. You can have them highlight the skill that you're really working on in a fun color or a highlighting color. And then also pull in some sentences. The internet will give you anything you search for, right? So if you type in words with AI, you will get 100 words for you to pull from that are outside of their spelling words, because we don't want them memorizing their spelling words each week. We want them to be able to apply that skill outside of just the word list your teacher is giving them to use. And then, of course, that's just like a little practice test. Whatever you do for reading, you should do with writing. All right, and the third trick tonight is increasing fluency. So to practice fluency, your learner really needs to have something that is not too difficult at home. So you can do this a few different ways. You could pull a passage out from the book that they're reading and just say, okay, on page 10, we're going to make page 10, our fluency page this week. And you can make this a fun little game or activity where you have them set a timer, or you say, okay, let's set a timer. Now, if the timer is something that frustrates your child, then I don't recommend that. You know your child better than anyone else. And the last thing we want is for them to feel defeated or to feel that they're back in school when it's been such a tiring, exhausting day. So if it's just a timer is going to set them off, we don't want to do that, okay? But one thing you could do is to say, hey, let's get out the timer and I'm going to listen to you read it, and then we're going to work on this page this week. And record the time after they do that cold read or where they haven't really read it before. And it's going to be choppy and you're going to find mistakes. And then I want you to read the passage back to them and say, okay, now I'm going to do it. It's my turn. And you can even make it a game where you time yourself too. And you can make it, don't make it too slow. You want to model it for them, but you can make it your own little parent competitive time. And then they should be able to whisper or read along with you, but you're modeling to them what a reader should sound like. And then at the end, go back to what they read. You will have made some notes. Pull out some words that were tricky for them. If those words were maybe words with a magic E on the end of it, like a consonant E, then, or any vowel consonant E, where pull up whatever was tricky for them and work on those words outside of the text. And especially without pictures, you really just want to work on the sounds and the rules of our language. And then encourage them to set a goal. Maybe your child loves math. Maybe they loved a graph. So have them create a graph where they have their first read and then they practice that same page. And then by Friday night, or maybe it's on the weekend, they read it and they have less errors, or they have increased their time or decreased their time. So that is just one way you could practice fluency. In school, you might hear the teachers call them cold reads and warm reads or hot reads. And that's just basically a cold read is the first time your student read something. And then with some time, it's become more comfortable and they've been able to practice fluency. I think one of the best ways to increase fluency is just sitting down with your child at night and partner reading, with you modeling beside them, and then they take a turn. And then you model a page, and then they take a turn. For them to hear what good reading sounds like is so important, because when you send them off to their room and tell them to go read a book, but they have these struggles, it's really not helping them. So if you have 20 minutes to set aside at night, even if it's just 3 times a week, where you are sitting with them and you are modeling what a good reader, they're hearing that vocabulary, they're able to discuss that story with you. And I think that's something that you can do with middle and high schoolers. I love to listen to my 5th grader read. And you know what? He's not the strongest reader. He is not, in my opinion, very fluent. And so I really, really like to listen to him read, and then I like to read to him. And it's something that I want to work on as a parent this year, and it's not too late. They need to hear what good reading sounds like so that they can pick up on those comprehension pieces and that vocabulary. So don't keep books away from them, and it's not your fault, but definitely expose them to stories of grade level so they have that rich text and they're not being left behind. Another way to practice fluency is, do you remember when we were learning AI, says A in the middle? You can go to Teachers Pay Teachers. It's my best friend. I spend a lot of money there. And you can, if you want to write down her name, Emily Gibbons, Gibbons. If you type in Emily Gibbons, she's got a ton of decodable passages that you can buy. They're very affordable. If you look at this passage, you could have your learner highlight the sound that you're working on. And this one obviously is focusing on AI. So they could highlight AI, says A in the middle. And then when they go back to read it, they know, oh, that's the sound I'm working on. And it's very predictable as far as being able to decode their skill. And then everything else in this passage typically are skills that they should have already learned. So you don't want to work on fluency with a passage that's too hard. So if your learner is doing something in school and they're doing guided reading levels and they're doing like a Fontes and Pinnell level, if they're instructional, let's just say at a level P, you don't want to work on fluency on a level P because that's the area that they're being instructed on, that they're not independent on that level. So you might want to go a couple letters down and pull some of those passages. And again, you can get all these resources for free off of the internet. If you just say guided reading level, L reading passage, you can probably find a lot of resources on the internet. You definitely want with fluency to pick something more simple, okay? That's very key. And when you are doing that, try scooping phrases to build fluency. So keep the text simple. You'll see in this little picture, there's just sentences. I included this woman's resource in our presentation link, so you can go to her page and she's got some free resources. But you want to teach them to chunk words together like we talk, because we don't talk like this normally, right? So we want to teach them that that is not how we want them to read. And because if you're choosing a more simple text, hopefully it will take away some of that barrier and they'll be able to learn to put 3 words together at a time. And you can actually sit with them and do it with a pencil eraser. They can scoop it, or if you don't mind your book being marked up, have them mark it with a pencil. So that is another way to practice fluency, is putting those phrases together instead of sounding choppy like a robot. When I look at this picture, if you think about your students and when they go into a library, or if you take them into a bookstore, or even as simple as their bookshelf in their classroom, what do you think your child or an individual with dyslexia might be thinking when they see this picture? After going through that simulation tonight and how frustrating that was for you, put some words in the chat room. What do you think might be going through their mind? Overwhelmed, absolutely. Disinterest, even dread. No way, right? That feeling of defeat, right? Like no way, like off limits, right? Because they think, I can't do that. I often think they might feel envy. Like, I wish I could pick up those books. I wish I could be like other kids in my class that can go and pick any book and they're excited to read. Bored, sad, like smart and complicated at the same time. Yeah, totally, Brian. So it's one of those pieces where as parents, you probably see more so than anyone what your learner's going through every day. And then when they go into school, they're feeling those, Brandon, exactly, that the defeat. And so it's up to us, the educators and the parents and the child, to partner together and to use any technique that works. Because just because I shared 3 simple techniques tonight doesn't mean that that's going to help your child. There's so much out there. And so good instruction is what's going to support our students. And so I just encourage you all, don't be afraid to research. There's a lot out there with dyslexia right now, tons of research on the science of reading. And I encourage you as parents to really, really read and learn and share with your team. Just like Dr. Marianne Wolf, I follow some of her webcasts and things like that, but she says dyslexia is a different brain organization that needs different teaching methods. So with dyslexic students, they don't learn the same way as others. And they're highly intelligent students, highly intelligent individuals. Many individuals with dyslexia are your entrepreneurs, and they just have a different need to learn how to read. I often try to use this example with dyslexia. Someone once said, it's like you're on the interstate and a typical traveler knows how to get from Virginia to Florida. You just hop on 95 and take the freeway. But a student or an individual with dyslexia, they want to take that freeway, but for some reason, their car keeps on getting off the exits and getting stuck on back roads. So their brain is like recalculating. It's like a GPS. It's like recalculating. And so eventually they'll get to Florida, but it's taken a longer travel time. They're exhausted. They just want to find that hotel and find food and go to sleep. Okay, so think about that with your learner. Here are some amazing resources. I mean, like Helen said earlier, there are so many different studies out there and trainings. She and I have done different trainings, but it all comes back to pretty much the same research. And so don't be afraid to dive in. Those are some of the pieces that I just incorporated tonight in a very short amount of time. And then I always close with this because this is, I think this is how your child feels about you. And I think this is how you feel about your child. So I won't play the whole thing, but I want you to take the words from this song, which is supposed to be a romantic song, right? But I want you to listen to it and replace these words with maybe what your child's saying to you and what you're saying to your child. I just think probably out of that, the words, I'll reach my hands out in the dark and wait for yours to interlock. I'll wait for you. So what I can leave you with tonight as parents, just don't give up on them. Don't give up on yourself. Keep reaching. There's going to be some waiting, and then keep reaching. Eventually, you're going to interlock with your team of learners, your teachers, yourself, your child, and you're going to get them to that other side if you keep fighting. So I thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. I hope you're able to take just one simple strategy. Don't overload yourself. I've included a way to get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to share resources with you. There's my email, and there's my Twitter tag. So reach out and don't be a stranger. I love working with you all.